Hey guys, what's up? It's Spool again here. Thought I'd make a quick video um, about logging and how to view your logs. Now most of you know I'm using an Evo 8 ECU in my 1G. So right now I got EVOscan up. Now first thing, when you log, you want to make sure you're logging the proper data. Right here is a list of things that I like to log on a regular basis. Some of this is very important, some of it's not that important, but you definitely want most of this. Throttle position is very important, as well as load. You can have speed on there, coolant temp, timing advance, engine RPM, knock sum, injected duty cycle, that's important. So just before you even begin logging, make sure you have this stuff selected. Now there's a bunch of other stuff too. I run open loop tuning. I have closed loop disabled, so I don't need to worry about any fuel trims or like that. But if you are still using closed loop and you still have a factory front O2 sensor, you might want to log it. Just something to keep in mind: the more items that you have selected, the slower your log's going to be, the slower everything logs. So anyway, now before you start logging, you're going to want to know where your logs are saved at. So when you log, if you come up here to the logging tab, you go down to set new data folder. When you're finished logging, when you start logging, you click start data logger. Then when you're done, you can hit stop. EVOscan automatically saves your log for you every single time. So by default, it goes to your My Documents and then down to EVOscan folder, and then it goes to the Save Data Logs. That's where your logs are going to be. So now if we go to Microsoft Excel, this is where you're going to want to view all of your information. You need some kind of spreadsheet program. If you don't have Microsoft Excel or any of the other Office products, there's a bunch of free ones you can get. They're not nearly as good, and if you're going to be logging often, I definitely highly suggest getting Microsoft Office with Excel. But if you don't have it and you really want to log right now, the easiest way is to go on Google and search something like free spreadsheet software. There's a couple of them out there that are half decent, but Excel is by far the best. So try to get Excel. Nowadays you don't have to buy Microsoft Office outright. You can do like a monthly subscription. It's only like, not that much a month, like $5-6 or something like that a month, depending on what all you get. But so let's just say you have Microsoft Excel or some kind of spreadsheet viewer. You go to File, click Open, click Browse, and go to My Documents, EVOscan 2.9, and Save Data Logs. Now, after, like, the very first time you do this, and maybe every time you open and close Excel, when you go to Browse and you're looking for files, this is always going to be set on all Excel files until you change it. So these are some logs that I've saved as an Excel file, but you want to select the drop down arrow and click all files so that it will display all of your logs. And your most recent ones are going to be at the very bottom, and they also have the dates right on the file name to help you determine that. It has the date and the time. Another thing to look at real quick is the size of these. So my very last one here is 744 KB. Next one up is 2100. Now the reason why this file is a lot bigger is because it's a lot longer. So maybe I started logging this one and did a couple pulls or whatever and then hit stop to logging. So that one's not very big. This one here probably has a lot of idle time, a lot of driving time, you know, whatever. So that's something to just take notice. Say if you do a bunch of logs and you want to look at wide open throttle stuff, maybe you're driving around for a while, just cruising around while logging, and then you stop it, and then you start another one, and then immediately do a couple pulls, and then stop it. That file will be a lot smaller. So we're going to look at this one here. So it's 2100. That's a pretty decent size. It's probably got a lot of information. So for demonstration purposes, we'll click that one, open it up, and this is what you're going to get. Something that I always do, depending on what I'm going to look at. Usually when I'm looking at a log, I'm looking at wide open throttle stuff. I'm always trying to make sure that it's safe, make sure I'm not getting any knock, and I'm always wanting to improve on it. So what I do is, when I'm going to only look at wide open throttle stuff, and I'm only going to be looking at a few things like load, I'll be looking at load, I'll be looking at my timing advance, obviously my knock, RPM. A lot of stuff here you'll see it doesn't have any data. Again, I'm open loop, so I don't have any O2 stuff, I don't have any fuel trims. So all this stuff we can get rid of, just so that way we can have our information that we need displayed all together. So what I always do is I highlight all the columns that are useless. I click one column, I click and hold control on the keyboard, and I click all the empty columns, or columns that I don't need, I'm not looking at, like coolant temp, I don't need that, I don't need to look at it. And then I want to delete them, so right click and I delete. So now all of our information is a little closer together, and we don't have to skip over useless columns that we don't need. Now there's a couple ways to find your wide open throttle stuff. So right here it looks like maybe I fired up the car, let it idle for a couple minutes, and then started logging. So this column right here is going to be very important when you're looking for wide open throttle stuff. It's TPS, which is obviously your throttle position sensor. Now at idle, my TPS is always around 13% when I'm completely off the throttle. So all of that's all idle time, or if I'm driving, that's when I'm off the throttle and I'm cruising or something. But because my speed is 0, obviously I'm not moving, this is all idle. So the first way to do this, and it's a longer way to do this, but it's kind of my favorite way to do this, especially if it's a shorter log and I'm already driving. When I start the log, I highlight everything, the first cell under the categories, highlight this, and I keep going down and down and down until I start noticing that I am going wide open throttle. Now when you go wide open throttle, your TPS readings will be closer to 100%. If your TPS is perfectly adjusted, your wide open throttle TPS will read 100%. In my car, my TPS is not adjusted perfectly, so I never see 100%. I always see something like 95, 96. You see right here, I kind of started getting kind of close to wide open throttle, but I'm not fully wide open throttle, so I'm going to keep going down until I find some wide open throttle stuff. This is all when I'm cruising on and off the throttle. And hopefully soon we find a wide open throttle pull. And alright, right here we go. 97% in my case is wide open throttle. So now we got all this highlighted, all the way from underneath the category TPS all the way down to here. Now the reason why you highlight this is because especially if this is your first time and you're still new to this, you're going to see all this, and you notice up here you can't see the category, so you don't know what is what, maybe. Now obviously it's easy to figure out. This is RPM, this is timing, advanced, this is TPS, this is my load. But it just makes things a lot easier if you just delete all that, because when you delete it, you click delete row, entire row. When you delete it, now everything's bumped all the way up. Now you can see all the categories here. So now it's easier when you're looking at something. You can say, okay, what's my timing? Well, come up here, bam, there's my timing. So right here, now this isn't a very long wide open throttle pull, but all of this is when I'm completely wide open throttle, and then I get out of it, and I'm back to 13% TPS. So now we're looking at wide open throttle. Now we can kind of see what is going on. You can see that my load is 136 when I first go wide open throttle, and by the time I let off, it's 294. Now with my car, 296 is my peak load. And then, so this is, you look at all this, RPM, start RPM is around 4,000, and I go all the way up to 6,100 before I let off. Now, one of the most important things you need to look at when looking at wide open throttle is your knock sum. If you're getting knock, that's not good. That's very dangerous. That means you're getting a lot of detonation, and a lot of things could be going wrong. You could have too much timing. You could have, maybe, I don't have it displayed here because I don't log my wideband, but maybe you're too lean, you're too rich, and you're getting knock. You can see here I'm not getting any knock in this pull, in this wide open throttle pull. Injected duty cycle. Now usually you don't want this to be any more than 80%. In my case, I just switched to E85 a few months ago. When you switch to E85, you use a lot more fuel. You need a lot more fuel volume forcing your engine, just because of how E85 is. So in my case, I ended up using about 30 or 35% more fuel on E85 than I was on pump gas, like on 93 octane. So now my PT 1000cc injectors are pretty much maxed out. If I turn my boost up much more than this, then I'll start getting some lean conditions. But even though in this pull right here, my injected duty cycle is all up to 96%, I'm still not lean. My AFRs are perfect. But like I said, if I try to turn my boost up another 5 psi, I would probably be running lean. And now usually that would cause some knock. E85, you don't usually have much knock. You can run some really lean AFRs and not have any knock. That's one of the benefits from E85. The biggest reason why you would switch to E85 is because you have a lot less of a chance of having detonation, which means you can turn the timing up. You can advance the timing, and timing makes power. So it's not really the fuel itself that makes power, it's just the fact that you can get more aggressive with your tune and your timing. But anyway, these are some things you can look at. Now, something that I do often is every time I look at wide open throttle, I check to see if I got any knock, and if I don't have knock, and I always don't have knock, I can start turning my timing up. So maybe this is the first time you logged and you want to start tuning a little bit and playing with your ignition maps. So I'm going to pull up ECU Flash, which I already have my exact tune loaded up. This is my ignition timing map. So you want to transfer the data from your log to, you want to verify that it's, one, that it's doing its job and it's following the timing map, but two, you want to build a timing curve. You want to know which part of the map you're running. So what you do is you find a wide open throttle, and let's say right here the first load cell is 136 at 4,000 RPM. Let's go back to ECU flash. Load 136. See, it's between 120 and 140, so we'll just go to 140, that's closest. And forgot which RPM it was at. Go back to the log real quick. 4,000 RPM. So at 4,000 RPM and 140 load, my timing should be 12 degrees. Let's get back to my log. And it's 13 degrees. Now it's not always going to be spot on. Remember, it's load 136. There is no 130 or 136 column in the map, so it's never going to be perfect. Now if this was 140 exact load on the log, then maybe it would be closer and be 12. But anyway, you keep going down one column at a time, or one row at a time. The next load cell we have is 182 at 4,300 RPM. So 180 at 4,250 is probably going to be the closest to 4,300. So the log is saying we had 11 degrees of timing at 182 load and 4,250 roughly RPM. So go back to here, and that's actually pretty close. It's spot on. So you just keep doing this. Also, say you click this, right? It's the first cell we did. You want to leave all your cells highlighted, so you click the first one. Every time you click another cell after that, you click Control on the keyboard and click the next one. Just keep going down the log. Now it's kind of time consuming, but this is very, very big part of tuning. So next cell down is 211 load, and we'll call it 4,500 RPM. So 211, 4,500, 210, 4,500. Still at 11 degrees. Go back to the log, and we're still at 11 degrees on the log. So now I'm getting into boost. You can tell that because the load is really starting to rise. The more boost you run, the higher the load. So now the load goes all the way to 270. So by 4,600 RPM, load is 270. 270, 4,600 RPM. Now 4,600 RPM is going to be roughly right between 4,500 and 4,750. So what we can do in this case is we can highlight both of these. And let's see, on the timing map it says at this load, at that RPM, we should be around 4 degrees. And this is reading 5 degrees. So it's close. Keep going. Next one is 296. Now 296, you see that's my highest load to this wide open throttle pull. That's the highest load is your peak load. At your peak load, you want it to be your absolute lowest timing. And then from there, you want the timing to gradually rise. So 296, we'll call it 300 at 5,000 RPM. And it's probably going to be a couple cells worth. $300, 5,000 RPM right here, and is that the right one? Yep. Okay, so we're at 300 load, 2 degrees of timing at 5,000 RPM. It's pretty close. Now I'm going to keep going up. So we're going to be around 300 load for the rest of this pull. It's between 300 and 290, right in the middle of that. So we could take the load all the way up 300 to 290, all the way up to about a little over 6,000 RPM. So go all the way down to 6,000 RPM, which is right here. Now, usually I shift around 7,000 RPM. So obviously in this pull I didn't go much further than 6,000 RPM. But because I know what my car does, I know that if I go all the way up to 7,000 RPM, my load is still going to remain around the same, between 290 and 300. So we can go all the way down here, and right around 7,000 RPM it starts to dip down closer to 290. So now if you look at the highlighted cells, we have built a timing map, or a timing curve. So this is the area of the timing map that my car runs when I'm wide open throttle. Now the shape of your timing curve is a big thing. On my 16G, my curve would kind of go this way, it would peak, and then as the RPM started rising, it would kind of dip down and dip down and dip down. Usually with my 16G, I would definitely peak earlier because I had full boost earlier on the 16G than I do my HY35. I usually hit full boost and peak load right around 4,200 RPM, and then from 4,200 RPM it would kind of taper down this way. After I put my whole set on, I had to build a completely different timing map because, one, I'm getting much higher load, and my load isn't really dropping off as much as my 16G. So now we know what part of the map that our car is hitting. Now we can tune. So you don't have to only adjust these cells, obviously. You want it all to be smooth. You can see how there's only like a 1 or 2 degree difference between all these cells. From the top to bottom, the timing advances. There's no, like, say if we went from 7 to, I don't know, to 12, like, that's not smooth. You want it to be very, very smooth, as smooth as possible. When you adjust one cell, you are going to have to adjust all the cells around it and kind of blend it into the map. Now you can't always do that, but you want to try as much as you can. Now right here, just looking at this, if I went past 7,000 RPM and I got closer to 7,500 RPM, my timing would go from 7 to about 11 degrees. So it's kind of a big drop, or a big difference. But over here, you see the RPMs, they start out at a pretty gradual increase: 2250, 2500, 2750, 3000. But when you get down on a higher RPM, instead of 250 RPM increments, it kind of goes to 500. So it's not too bad of a thing. Say from 7,000 to 500, it goes from 7 to 11. But if we had another in between here, if we had something like 6750, for example, that cell would probably read somewhere around 9. So it wouldn't be too bad to go from 7 to 9 to 11. So that wouldn't be too bad. So you definitely want all of everything just to be as smooth as possible. You could do the same thing with the fuel maps. You could do the same thing and build the fuel map curve, but usually you only do it with the ignition map curve. So now the other way that you can find this information, instead of going like this and going all the way down like we did earlier, you can do it a different way. Now I'm going to hit undo, so we have all of the data back. So if you highlight the entire TPS column. Then you come up here and hit data. Then you hit filter. You'll now see that we have a drop down arrow. Click that. Then this is all the data that is presented in the TPS column. Now we only want to look at wide open throttle stuff. So deselect everything, go all the way down here to the bottom, and I want to look at everything that's close to around 100% throttle. So now we have, the only information we have is wide open throttle stuff. But when doing this, you got to be careful. Always look at your log ID numbers when you do this, because you'll notice it goes from 34, 61, 62, 63. Eventually, see, we go from 34.69 to 36.57. That's because this is one pull and this is another pull. And then you see it changes again. It goes from 36.64 to 82.59. So it's three different pulls. So you could look at this information really quickly and kind of ignore everything below this pull, and you can look at it that way, and then do the same thing for the next one. Look at this pull, and you can just keep doing that. But sometimes you kind of get lost in the information, and you just have to keep going back here and look where it ends at. So what I like to do in this case is I highlight this. This is all one pull right here. Now if we go back up here and hit undo, we get all of our information back, and it should automatically put you right around here. Now this is our pull. Now we have all the wide open throttle stuff plus immediately after it when I let off. So I won't get any of this information confused with another separate wide open throttle pull. Another thing too is if you do, like say if I did a second gear pull, shifted a third, did a third gear pull, shifted a fourth, and just did a second through fourth gear pull all in one shot. Well, every time I let off the throttle, my TPS is going to drop. This isn't a very good example, but I might be able to find something real quick. If not, I'll be able to find it in a different log. Sometimes, usually I only do like one pull at a time, a single gear pull at a time, but I'll see if I can find it in another log real quick. Open, browse. Let's try this one here. This is a smaller file, so it's a shorter log. This looks like, yep, this is a good example here. So I'm going to take this, delete everything above it that's not wide open throttle, so we can see our categories. Now, speed, 32 miles an hour, so I'm guessing I'm in second gear at this point. And I'm wide open throttle, doing a second gear pull, and then you see it goes from 97 down to 13. So I'm in second gear, RPM is rising, and then I shift, so I let off. You see my TPS goes down to 13%, which is when I'm completely off the throttle, and then I get back into it. So RPMs are starting at 4,000 RPM, going all the way up. 6,800, I shift, RPM drops all the way down to 4,400 RPM, and from 4,400 RPM I'm in third gear all the way up I'll take the RPMs all the way up to 6100. I shift again. RPMs are falling. They fall all the way down to 40. I guess I only shifted once apparently. So I did a second gear pull, shift third here, get back in it. I'm in third gear. I take third gear out, and then after that I get out of it completely. So I did a second and third gear pull right here. It's something to look at. So you know, because obviously if you do more than just one single gear pull, you're gonna have a few rows of data where you're off the throttle. So say if I'm looking at this and I'm watching my timing, it drops down to peak load, hits peak load, it's at its lowest point, then the timing starts rising as it should, and then all of a sudden, why did it go 8 to 24? Well, that's because I shifted. So my timing is going to be much different when I'm off the throttle than when I was in gear during a pull under boost. I shift, RPMs drop, I get back into it, timing starts going back to normal, it drops down to peak load. As soon as it hits peak load, it's at its lowest point and it starts rising again, all the way up until I let off again. And every single time you look at a wide open throttle pull, first thing you want to do is look at the knock. Luckily I didn't get any knock here. Now the whole drop down the filter thing here that we did with the TPS, you could also do it for knock. So say if you want to quickly scan your entire log to see if you got any knock, you can highlight the entire knock sum category, hit filter, hit the drop down arrow, and you'll see the only data that I have in this entire log is 0. That means I didn't have any log or any knock. Now let's see if I can find a log that I got knock in. I think there's one that I had. I want to say it is this one. So highlight knock sum, go to data, filter, click that. Nope, that's not the right one. This one. Not that one either. It's not a bad thing. I was looking at a log earlier and I noticed that I got some knock, but it was only one log and it was only like 1 or 2 pulls, so I don't really know why I had log or any knock, but just I want to find it so that way I can show you guys. Here I got 1 count of knock, so we could either look at just the when I got 1, and you can see it wasn't even when I was wide open throttle, so it was just random phantom knock. So there was one that I was looking at earlier that had a pretty decent amount of knock though. Just X some of these out. See this one, maybe it's in this one. One count. Of course, now that I'm looking for it, I can't find it. Shit. check it just to make sure. I'm gonna do one more. If I can't find it, we'll just move on to something else. Alright, here it is. Okay, so you see now I have 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 7. So let's look at the 3 or the 4 and 7. 1200 and 1400. So hit undo. We'll go to 1200. And we'll find the knock. Maybe. Alright, there's one count. There we go. Okay, so, and I'm wide open throttle. Actually, there I'm not. I bet you this was anti-lag. Let me delete all this. That way it's all at the top. Okay, so nope, that was just random. Phantom knocks, 7 counts. I'm off the throttle completely. This was after I did a pull though. Let me undo. 2 counts. Okay, now the other one was in 1400. 1400, I'm talking about these when I'm the log ID is very important. It's like the home, I guess, for where everything lies. So right here we've got some more knock. So I'm gonna go from here all the way up, delete it. So go wide open throttle, and pretty much immediately I'm getting knocked for some reason. I get 4 counts, 3 counts, 2 counts, 1 count. Now here's something. When you get knock, your EC will pull timing. That's just how it works. So right here we're running 300 load at 5300 RPM. So 5300 RPM, we'll come back to our timing map. 5300 RPM is right around here. So we're supposed to have 2 degrees of timing. Come back to our log. And for some reason, the timing is much higher. That's very strange. But the RPMs jump up a lot too for some reason. So it goes from 5300 all the way to 58 for some reason. That's a pretty big difference. But anyway, what I was trying to show you was when you get knock, when knock is detected, your EC will pull timing. Now it depends on how much knock. It's not going to pull timing if you get 1 degree. I think it's like 3 or anywhere between 3 and 5, for example, to pull 1 degree of timing. And if you get more than that, it'll keep pulling more and more timing. But anyway, if you're looking at this and you didn't look at your knock and your ignition maps didn't add up to what your log was reading, if it was lower, say if you're supposed to have 7 degrees of timing but we're only getting 4 degrees of timing, well, if you're getting 5, 6, 7, 8 counts of knock, your ECU is going to be pulling the timing. So instead of getting 7 degrees of timing, maybe you'd get 4 or 5 degrees of timing instead of 7. I really don't know why. This is definitely probably phantom knock, because it didn't last long at all. It was just a little blip. But that's, very important to look at. And here's, I got some more counts. 1 degree here. That's through wide open throttle. Right around 5,000 RPMs, which is probably where this was. Roughly, yeah. That's about it. That's the very basics of reviewing a log. Wide open throttle is something you're going to be looking at a lot, and it can be very time consuming, and there's some quick shortcuts. The whole filter tool, that's convenient. In the tech article that I have about all this stuff, I talk about putting a timing curve to a graph. I put screenshots on it, so you could build a graph with your timing curve to make a timing curve like in a graph form. So that's something you could take a look at. It's nice. It's a little, you don't have to do that. There's a lot of other cool tricks and tips, but this is the basic stuff. This is what you're going to be seeing. This is how you look at your logs. You look at it through an Excel spreadsheet. So yeah, if you guys have any questions or would like to see some more stuff, if you have any requests, let me know. I don't always have time to do this stuff, but I try to put things into tech articles and videos when I can, because a lot of people ask the same stuff, and I got one phone call, explaining the same exact stuff that I explained to somebody else, a month ago or something, for example. So when people come to me with questions, it's nice to be able just to send them a link to a tech article or a video. It saves me a lot of time, that's for sure, and it's easier to learn that way too. With a video, you can see all this, and you're not just on the other side of a phone call where I'm trying to describe everything on the phone. This is nice. You have something to actually see. So, but yeah, if you have any requests or want any specific stuff that I could show you, just let me know. Thanks, guys. Thanks for watching.